Hello and welcome to the Championship Club's podcast. It's the new weekly show, championing everything that is good about English rugby's second tier. I'm Michael Casey and I'll be hosting the series, and I'm delighted to say that I'll be doing so alongside a man who could not be better qualified to talk about Champ Rugby, not least because he's played for nearly all the teams in Champ Rugby. Ben Gulliver, how are you doing?
Yeah, hi Mike. Yeah, good to be here, mate. Thanks for mentioning that. But yeah, I think I'm at 7 out of the 11 clubs this year. So yeah, you've got it's a good description of my my past in the league. But obviously delighted to be here, and it's nice to be talking positively about a league that's sometimes a little bit self-deprecating.
Yeah, I think let's dive into that. Obviously, we took Bedford, Pirates, Coventry, Ampthill, and then, of course, spells in the Prem with Worcester and Leicester. Carved out a career of over 300 games. So I think, as you say, fair to say, a big advocate of the league, and it's brought a lot to your life, and you've seen firsthand the significance of the division within English rugby. Yeah,
it's something I'm learning to be proud of. I think sort of during the time as a player and sometimes when you come out of the game and you speak about your experiences in rugby and you say you're a professional rugby player, and then the line after that, and I always say, and I don't know why I've said it, but it's in the second tier. And yes, it is, but it's still a great achievement. Something I'm really proud of. And I think sometimes you get a little bit, you're sort of lost with the whole Premiership goal and, that big carrot. But what the guys are doing and what I managed to achieve in my career through the Championship is something that we should all be very proud of, something that I'm really proud of, and something that we've not, as a collective, really spoken about over the past. So that's why it's great to have Alan on today, so we can get into Alan's insight, obviously, but spending 20 years down at the Pirates now, I think, I was looking.
It's a long time.
So it's, between us, there's a good amount of experience to talk about our own personal experiences, but also where we could see the league going and, the future of it.
Of course, yeah, that's what we want to do. Dive into some of the tales, some of the significance, some of the stories, and some of the things that make this league truly unique and valuable. And, we wanted to start this podcast with a bang. And to that end, I'm delighted to say that we're joined by a man who's played 360 games for Cornish Pirates and now sending shockwaves through the English game as joint head coach of Cornish Pirates. Alan Paver, thank you very much for joining us today on the podcast.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, and thanks for giving me an opportunity just to, have my say on the Championship, because I think it is a special league, a tough league, and it's as we'll delve into, it's not for the faint-hearted, and it is a little rough around the edges, but there is absolute value in it, and that's why I'm privileged to be here to talk about it.
Yeah, well, I think it'd be remiss if we didn't start talking about the Pirates, Alan, having you on the show with us for week one. I think obviously that week one result against Saracens has been the one that's really got tongues wagging within the division. Sat up here in Doncaster, I've been watching with my beady eye everything that's going on down at the Menai. You're out there on a limb down there in Penzance and thinking what sort of covert operation has Paver and Cattle got them going, because I tell you what, you come out week one and produce a result like that. How has this off season, I guess, compared to normal for you, and what's been the secret down in the Menai?
So look, when the lockdown hit, and we had that first initial period where everyone was off, and then there was the option to bring guys back on like the community guideline. A lot of people didn't take that option because they couldn't see really what was happening, a month or 2 months or even 5 months down the line, as it ended up being quite a long time. But we said, look, let's get the guys back in. Let's get them just running around. Let's pass in the ball, do what we can within the guidelines. And we didn't know how to start. We really didn't. It was just an absolute mess. But we got them in, and, the guys were like, why are we here? Why are we training? But I said, well, what's the alternative? Sit at home. Well, drink too much, do too little, dwell on what possibly could be, what's going to happen, what isn't going to happen. So for us, we got them in as early as we could. But it did come with its complications. As I say, there was a lot of questions asked. Why are we here? What are we doing? We should be at home and have you. But as we worked through it, And just of recent times, when we all started a test, it very quickly, probably the last 4 weeks before the season start to look and feel like rugby. Up until that point, it just didn't. It just didn't, It felt like a fitness camp.
Right.
So it's been very difficult. It's been difficult to bring in new routines and new norms. But here we are, and we have got new routines and new norms with testing and social distancing and all the things that go with it. But the biggest difference now is that the guys have a competition, they have a focus, they have something to turn up for every day. And I didn't realize how important a weekly, daily focus is to just people, full stop. So it has been difficult in a nutshell.
The Paves, just on that is so you're saying sort of 4 weeks out before you've got a full rugby schedule in, and then previous to that it is very sort of individual and small-sided stuff. So like you say, we're all sort of process driven in this game, and if there is no process, you worry about players' sort of health and where they're going, and they may drift. So I suppose that side of it, how as a group of coaches and as a club have you managed to support the players individually and then collectively, or are they because like my time back, they're very self-policing? Is it still that sort of support network down there, or is there something sort of formal in place from you guys?
I've learned a lot over this period, massive. So yeah. I'll take you back to the beginning, and I sit here. We nearly lost the players.
Really?
Can you believe that, Ben? I was saying that.
As in lose them out of the club?
Lose them mentally.
Oh,
lose
right.
them. We nearly, as some would say, we nearly lost the changing room because we brought them back. I remember the arguments with the staff.
Yeah.
Me telling them, you've got to come back in. You've got to, and we're in this lockdown. Remember, like I'm saying, we've got to support this program. We've got to keep going. We've got to turn up. We've got to put one foot in front of the other. And I'm telling the players that. And me and Gav internally are having a lot of dialogue. Do you think this is right? What about this? What about that? And what I tried to do was connect them, not just me. I mean, as a group.
Mm.
Morgs was just like straight down the line. He's for those who don't know him, he's the forwards coach there, and he's very much, you turn up, you get your job done, and you crack on kind of man. You take him to war.
Yeah.
And we got to a point where we were like, right, we need to connect the players to something bigger than just what's going on, because every second word coming out of our mouths was COVID, furlough, reductions.
And what does that mean?
What does that mean? And then it was, how am I going to pay mortgages? And what happens to the league and all this stuff? And why are we here? And what are we training for? But this was my learning out of it all. I try to connect them to a vision of what the club was trying to do long term. It was wrong. We needed to connect them to what it is that they wanted. So we went down, it was about 8 weeks to go, and we said, right, we've got to change tact here quickly. And we said, what do you want? It was the first time we talked to them individually about, what do you as an individual want? What are you aspiring to? What do you want on the field? What are you doing off the field? What does your life look like in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years? I wish we'd done that from the start, because it changed everything overnight, because then everyone's story is so different. Everyone's reasons so different. And yes, you need commonality. You need a goal. The club is going in this direction. But even the club didn't know at that point, because the world had changed overnight.
Yeah.
So the first thing was that we brought the staff in and we reconnected properly, man to man. Couldn't be done over Zoom. It couldn't be done. It had to be done face-to-face, arguments. It had to be gritty. It had to be discussed. It had to have everything. And then from that point, then we said, right, how do we navigate these players through this? And a lot of it was just on belief, the belief that we would get going.
Yeah.
So it genuinely, it was tough, because we didn't know how to handle it. We'd never been here.
And I suppose sort of in a normal times, the league's so relentless, and the nature of rugby is you're just so focused on the next one, aren't you? And yes, you have your long-term plan in place, but it's very week to week, session to session. And then for this to come in and there isn't that, the questions must come from all over the place, and you don't have the answers because the answers aren't there because we've never been through it. So it must have been really tough.
It was, and there's so much learning out of it. I mean, like, and even simple things like we try to get all our players out to as many Prem clubs as we could. Yeah. Some guys decided that they were going to go into work. Some guys retired. And it just felt. And there was occasion we're looking around thinking, where's everyone gone? Like, so. But there was a plan. The plan was, look, let's focus on the individual. Let's get them exposure. Let's get them into an environment where they can grow. And then when we're ready, 4 weeks out, we'll bring them back, and hopefully we're ready to go.
I imagine as a Pirates fan, because I looked a little bit, sort of, you see things pop up on my Facebook or on the Instagrams and all the socials, and the fans are getting really worried. Sort of eight weeks ago, going, what are they doing? We're not going to have any players, but it was part of the plan. But it's part of the new plan, because it's, Pirates has a history of guys going on to play in the Premiership, but to actively go out and do that and find an individual plan for that player, I think it's amazing, really. But the perception is completely different to actually what's going on internally.
Oh, yeah.
Dangerous.
Yeah. I'd be really interested, and obviously you said there that getting those individual returns from players, from staff, to find out what sort of focus they had for this off-season, what sort of messages came back, and how you sort of unified that into sort of a common focus. Like, what sort of things were players saying? Because obviously, as you said, all of us, but I can imagine the atmosphere is heightened in that professional rugby environment where the heads were out of boys. What sort of things came back to you when you, if you can share?
Anything, right? Yeah, anything. So it was like, why is this club doing this? Why have they started testing before us? Like simple things like this, right? So we sat on the community guideline and we said, look, Dickie Evans, who's our benefactor, was topping the lads up financially, because we were like, some of them can't pay their wage. That's the reality of the champ. Some of these lads can't pay for their mortgage. So he was topping them up. But for us to start testing really early was a bridge too far. Financially, it was too far. So we just sat at the outer limit of what we could do with on that. I think it was Community E. But they're hearing all these things. Oh, why are Donny testing? Why are these testing? Our Ealing got pre-season games. They didn't understand the financial implication of that. We said, pay the players. We'll sit as we are. We'll deal with it. Dickie Evans fully on board. Club knew exactly what we were doing. We went focused on the players, get them exposure, get them paid, make sure that they're fully informed the best we can. We couldn't always inform them of everything because it was dynamic.
Yeah, because I was going to say that's a difficult thing, and I've spoke to other guys around the league. It's the communication and where it comes from. So clearly, like from when I was playing down at Pirates, your WhatsApp groups and things, message just they're around the league within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like Ealing have gone straight back in, and like you said, the implications of testing, it's about 30-40 grand a week, I think, isn't it? Something.
Well, it was
a bit less than that, actually.
Yeah,
it's a lot of money.
It was less than that, but there was talk of it be going to twice a week, which was, But just to answer your question there in full, I mean, our key message was trust us to make the right decision based on facts, not what we think is going to happen, but what are the facts right in front of our face. And we said, every club is in a uniquely different position. Every club's unique, so unique, different structures. Some are part-time players, some are all full-time players. Some have players that, have families in the area and they've got local work. Some guys, like where we are, everything was so geographically isolated. So they couldn't go home, they couldn't do anything, they couldn't travel. So each situation was uniquely different. The learning out of it, if we could have done it again, we could have communicated earlier, clearer, better, more often, just that. But we didn't, because it was so dynamic. The situation was changing so quickly. Some days we went, Well, we're not telling them anything because we know it's going to change tomorrow. But by the time the drums started going, how do we not know this, but they know this? So, yeah, all the normal stuff.
Yeah, no, that was a battle that Steve Bode and the team had up here of information coming in, but then is it productive to share that information when everything's changing so quickly? But something that you went over there, Alan, which I think I really want to sort of draw out as we get into this series of podcasts, is how the situation at every club is different. This is a league which has got 11 clubs in this year. Obviously, London Scottish are going to miss out, which is a subject I'd love to talk about on another episode. But you've got 11 clubs in this division, all competing week in, week out for the same prize, ultimately, effectively. How realistic that is for different scenarios, it is different for each club. But there are 11 very, very different sets of situations within this club, within this league. And I just think it makes the intricacy of it so interesting, and it's something that I think we need to get out there and share and get people to get an understanding of, because you're looking, even with the live streaming this year, you see two sides go play on TV. You're used to watching Premiership rugby or international rugby or even football, and you just think, oh well, the two clubs on the same thing. But actually, the reality of how different a week to week training regime can be for one club into another could be, there can be worlds apart.
Oh, absolutely, and then you throw it in the mix of testing now, and even that simply has just changed the dynamic. But yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. Each club has its own unique, different challenges, and that's what make that club special as well. They've got their own identities, they've got their own systems and processes, and they've got their own way of playing, all the different styles. So I think it makes for a lovely, unique league.
Yeah, with your situation, right, with Pirates, Paves, obviously you guys are full time down there with your core group of players. Is it around the 30 mark? Is that traditional?
Yeah.
And then obviously with different stories around the league, you look at Bedford and their link with Saints. Do you guys at Pirates have an official or an unofficial link with any of the Premiership clubs, and how does that work with your dual reg and loans for the year?
So we have a really good relationship with Exeter. But at the same time, Exeter are trying to do the best they can with all of their different academy players. So they all play at all different levels. Yeah, they've got a great system. Some are in the senior academy and play A-League and bounce in and out of the first team. Some guys are in Taunton. Some guys are at Plymouth. That's been a big outlet. Some guys are with us. So they've spread the resources, okay, where they feel that player's going to get maximum benefit. So our game was born alongside of what Exeter did because we had first-hand experience. They were very good at sharing, and I've got to really commend that club, the players, the coaching staff, everything about it. They've been very supportive for us. And so our game grew alongside of that, and some of our systems and processes if we went back 5 years at the start of me and Gav's coaching, we decided to adopt many similar systems, not identically, because integration was easy.
Yeah.
If you had 5 lads coming from Exeter, and I remember, we had Stu Townsend at 9. Well, he defends on the edge for Exeter. Well, we just went, do you know what? Let's not put a square peg in a round hole here. We've got a quality player. That system looks really good. Let's just use that system. But as time's gone on, we haven't had the same amount of. Each year is different. Sometimes we might have 1, sometimes we might have 5. Where they are within their career can be different. So we've had to diversify a little bit ourselves with dual reg, and we've had guys come in from WAS and various different places over the last few years. So we have a special relationship with Exeter, but it isn't exclusive. Like, we're not exclusive to them either.
Yeah, and I suppose as a coach, that's, when you first started out with Gav as a coach, and you're bringing on processes from other clubs, then it's about your development as a coach and where your coaching philosophy fits with the group of players you've got, but also your experiences from working with Chiefs and then from your relationships with other people around the league and going over to New Zealand and those sort of things. And then it's finding your own identity as a coach. And then that then becomes the Pirates' sort of way of playing and their own personal identity.
Definitely. We have our own brand now. Initially, as we were when Ian Davis was here, he left us with a lot of infrastructure in place, and so we had a good beginning. When our director of rugby moved to one side, and then me and Gav was like, "Here you go, it's your show." And we were like, "Right,
all the best."
yeah, you go." But the one thing, Dickie Evans gave us time. He gave us space, and he actually, all the way through it, has been very, very supportive. He's unbelievably supportive. And so from a small beginning, a humble beginning, where we actually, first season, we were coaching alongside Ian Davis, we lost our first 10 games.
Jesus.
Yeah. I remember our first job was when we were told we were taking over and we were going to work underneath Ian. Our first job was to get rid of a third of the players, and most of them were the players that we played with. That was one of my first things. Never done a contract, sitting in a room telling Joe Atkinson, "Mate, we can't afford to keep you. What do you think that was like?" And then saying to him, "When you're ready, I'll come round for a cup of tea." Because that's the only way I could handle it. Here's the truth. We can't afford you no more. But as a mate, I'm going to come round and we're going to talk through anything you want to talk to when you're calm, because the emotions, massive. Imagine just that. And so doing that for the top third of your squad, which were the senior players, which were the players I played with, players that Gav played with. So that was the first introduction. And then as the squad quality and size shrunk, and then you lose your first 10 games the year after, and you're thinking, I thought I knew a thing or two about. But see, coaches think tactically and technically they know all sorts of stuff, and it's gonna sort the world out. It sorts nothing out. It's about people. It's about recruitment, retention, environment, culture. Yeah. But if you don't have the resource, it's hard.
It's also about winning, isn't it?
Oh, mate. Do you know people say winning doesn't matter? It does matter, because you tell me after 3 games, when you haven't won after 3 games, what is the environment? You could be doing the right thing, but if you haven't won, you're thinking in your mind, I need to change. It might be the right thing to do.
Yeah.
You might have done everything right. You just those guys and the coaching staff might be in a flux, in a change.
Yeah.
And it might not be cohesive and it might not be quite working. And someone just needs to say, keep going, lad. You just need a bit more time.
And then who would you have turned to at that point, Alan? Because you're thrown in. Ian's up the road. Is there a mentor there? Someone you could speak to, sort of externally from the club that helped you with that? Or have you just? Because I remember playing with you, and it was, it's grind on, get through it. We're A to B. This is how we work, and we're just going to do it. And fuck it, this is how it works. But you're into 10 games there, and you're going, this is not how it works.
It works. I just kept
Did you reach out? Did you reach out, or did you go insular?
Sorry, say again.
So did you reach out, or did you go really insular at that point?
I asked for as much help. Like, what do you think? Early on, we brought anyone and everyone in just to have a look.
Right.
Have a look. See what you're seeing. But the one thing I wrote on the board was this: we're working too hard for it not to work.
Right.
Just man hours. So when I was playing,
grind on.
Oh, do you know what? No matter what happens in my life, no matter what, there isn't a situation where I can't handle it, because I remember getting up at 4 a.m, doing my prep. I didn't know what sports code was. I didn't know what a spreadsheet, and doing finances and doing the budget and trying to work out contracts. And me and Gav in an office going, are you sure them numbers are correct? And doing it in NI. What's NI? Like, and so it was in the morning, wake up, going, coming in, delivering. And at the time I was playing.
So playing and coaching.
Playing and coaching. And at the end of the day, then we'd have to do all the admin. So then it would be like doing all the contracts, speaking to the chief exec, doing all the team manager. We didn't have a full-time team manager. We had Jan, who was doing the best he could. He was doing all all of like the visas and everything. I was going home and I remember this one night, and this happened so many times. So I would get to 10 o'clock at night and I'm now still prepping for the next day, and I would shut the lid because sports code and that and doing all these things. I was like, what is this? I didn't know anything about computers or anything. And I would go straight to bed. And I did that cyclically for months on end. And I remember one day, my mind just went, I had an old Mac and the license wasn't too good on it. And I'd been working for 3 hours and it was just getting ready, like to finish off. And it went, boom, all my work went. Fuck. I was like, I'm not going to swear here, but I was like, what is that? And my missus is looking at me. I said, go to bed. 2 a.m. I went to bed, straight back up, 4 o'clock, repeat. Because I didn't know how else to handle it except for just throw massive man hours at it.
Yeah.
Just attack it the best I could. And for a year, my missus said, you weren't even in the room. I couldn't, because there was no other way to deal with it. I was prepping before I went out and played for the next week.
Yeah.
Gav would say, mate, you've got to get in the changing room.
Fuck.
I'm like, right, Bristol. I remember playing at Bristol. I had to take my mum, not for me, but this is why I say there's not anything I can't handle. People say, can you work hard? I can work hard.
Yeah.
Finished a training session on Friday. I picked my mum up. I drove to Weston-super-Mare, dropped her at Lancaster. I drove back. I got 4 hours sleep. I got up. I prepped then for Hartbury and then had to get ready to play Bristol.
Nice, easy one then. Yeah.
Right.
Easy. So,
yeah.
So that for me was like, when I look back at it, it's just insanity.
What, Alan?
But we didn't know where else. We didn't know what to do. So that was my own personal story about my start and my coaching, which was I didn't know anything.
Right. You got
new scrums.
You got your 10,000 hours in your first year.
Yeah.
So, Alan, it'd be interesting, Ben, to hear your take on this. So, you talked about as a player, and obviously your time at Pirates as well. It was just bash one into the next, and obviously you've talked there how you've taken that unrelenting mindset into the coaching when you started. Now that you're a little bit longer in the game and you're coaching now, what changes have there been in how you attack your coaching role, but also what changes do you think you've seen in the playing environment? What sort of environment are you and Gav instilling down there at Pirates, and how is that different from maybe when you started there and when Ben was playing?
Me, and I've got to say this, me and Ben played at a time where it was just like more. Get on the back pitch. I remember our unit session, we'd scrum and maul for an hour and a half. Just scrumming and mauling.
And it'd be mauling and brawling, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It's just go. And it is happening. And we just, that's the mentality. But out of that, it's like with Plymouth at the same time, like with Donny, that's how you had a successful side.
Yeah.
You just had a massive maul and a massive scrum and away you went. And hopefully you've got some attack on the end of it and some decent players.
Yeah.
So the mindset is still the same. I expect a lot of hard work, and there's no escaping it where we are. There's no 3G pitch. We're covered in mud half the time. If we're going to go in the wet season off, we've got to go to the college. We train on there. It's horrific because that's where we get all our injuries. So we know as soon as we change the surface, okay, that we're going to damage the players. Our changing rooms are like 2 cells. It was cold constantly, but that was the bit that made us strong as well. At the time, it was difficult, but it also gave us a strength because we could cope with the travel, the training, the mud, the rain, the surface. It didn't matter because it was happening. The only difference now is that obviously, as you do as players, as we do as coaches, just the systems, the processes are refined. We work extremely well. I'm so lucky to work with the people I work with. It is unbelievable. And people say I've got the best job in the world. I say, come and join us for a couple of weeks and you will love it. We swim in the sea, we gym together, we play racquetball together, we laugh our heads off, we'll have a beer at the end of a tough week. I work with my mates. They're my mates. I trust them 100%. They trust me. We got a problem, we get it sorted. You can argue, you can do whatever you want, but we are rock solid. And then the players now are changing. They're changing from like what me and Ben were like, which is tell us what to do and we get on with it. Now the environment's about learning and growing. And yes, I still poke them with the odd stick now and again if effort's not there. But there's a lot of education go on and there's a lot of discussion. The environment's more open. The training sessions are more directed. It's more precision around what you're doing. But remember, that's off the back of coaches and environments that, it had to start from somewhere. These coaches there was no level 3 and 4s for them. They had to just get going and start. And then, so they all say, you're standing on the shoulders of giants. We had an infrastructure which me and Gav then could accelerate off. So it has changed, more learning, more precision, I would say.
It reminds me of a story that I used to hear down in Donny on one of our third pitches out here. There's an embankment that goes down the side, and some of the old lads here used to tell them that Lynn Howells used to make them maul up the embankment, and that was a good Tuesday afternoon.
Mate, and you had a massive maul. I remember like absolute battles. I'm not saying they're not battles today, because they are. But there was some big characters, big personalities like Nalu and like Bunny and that. There was some big personalities in there. That's why I love seeing Chandler still running around.
I
love that guy.
Club legend. I think we're going to have
that guy.
Statue built.
Get him on the pitch. Let him bash it. I love it. When he's on the pitch, loving life.
Oh, he's so good.
Yeah, I think when he does finally hang up his boots, we're going to have to get a statue or something made of Matt Challoner here.
Oh, 2 statues.
There we go. So wanting to move along, that was fantastic. I've written down some show notes here, which I'm going to chuck out the window, but I thought we'll try and stick to some sort of script. I'm loving what we're getting so far. And I just want to sort of recall a few, and Ben, you as well, some favourite moments from the champ, whether these are seasons, whether they're anecdotes, whether it's games. And then also, we know the talent pathway within the championship. If you look on social media, it's quite quick to tell you how many players are now playing in the Premiership that started in the champ or perhaps dropped out the Prem, went to the champ and are now playing internationally. I'd be really interested to get the thoughts of both of you, maybe some of the best players that you either played with, against, or coached within the division. And yeah, some of those sort of favourite happy memories, and maybe some of the worst memories as well.
Let's get the worst, well, not the worst, but a funny one. Me and Paves were chatting about sort of the Sarries win and the fact that they flew in on the same day. And we both, when we were both at Pirates, we had an away trip to Otley when they're in the league, and you get the message in that you're flying like, oh, brilliant. That's great. So then you find out the flight's at 5 a.m. in the morning. So I was living in Plymouth at the time. So, and guys weren't as close as they were, I don't think, at Pirates House. Everyone's within 30 minutes, but there's a few from like an hour. We're flying from Newquay, and then you jump on the plane at 5 a.m. and think, yeah, I'll get a bit of a nap, and you don't. We landed at Leeds Bradford Airport. We then get a bus, which was late, obviously. They get a bus to a pub where we don't even have breakfast, do we, Paige? We just had sandwiches.
Sandwich in a pub.
Sandwiches in a pub, getting changed and strapped in a pub, like half an hour outside of Otley. And then we get the coach into Otley. We actually won. We won with a bonus point. I can remember the game quite clearly. We won quite well, and was thinking, brilliant. Back on the bus, back on the plane, home at midnight. And I can remember going into the review, And it was sort of, and I don't want to like sound like I'm slagging coaches off or anything, but it was just a funny week because they're like, we've given you everything, and you let them back in the game, and it's like, oh, it was one day, guys, but we'll take the 5 points and move on. But it's just there's stories like that at every club that you think you know what you're doing, but you probably were better off going up on a bus the night before.
Oh, absolutely. I remember that day, and I had a belly full of black pudding because I went round the corner for a full English breakfast. You know what I mean? It's like, but they didn't know, did they? Like, oh, we're flying, so you've got to win.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't know.
It's just different, isn't it? And it's like you said, you don't know until you know, do you?
Exactly, yeah.
On paper, that looks great. But yeah, I suppose sort of back to your question, Mike, it's sort of like the players that sort of stick to mind. A lot of them are from my time at Pirates. You know, we had a great team down there, and I think it was my second year when we won the BNI Cup, and then the following year we made the champ final, and there was a real sort of collective drive to get to where we wanted to get to, but also there were some talented players there. And like Paver was saying earlier in the chat, that the amount of hard work that went into that was real. It was full on. But we got the rewards. And what's great is you look at a team sheet. There's a few team sheets knocking around this week of the Donny Pirates games over the years. And there's 17, 18 players on these lists that have gone on to play Premiership rugby. And the Championship's been a real part of that journey. And it's not a one or two games. It's a season, 2 seasons. And these guys have grafted away and learnt their trade. And they've gone on to great things in the Premiership.
Yeah, so in terms of that development pathway, what do you think it is that the Championship provides players to either enable them to make that step up to Premiership or to bounce back, say, if they've come out of an academy and got back in?
I think from my perspective, it's like you can either be at school learning or you can be on the job learning. Okay, or you can be on the building site learning, and we're the building site. We're like, here you go, lad, get on with it. Or what happens here, and you've got a load of blokes around you, and you're looking around trying to find your place. And I think it exposes people, players, coaches, to reality. What are you like as a player after 10 games? What are you like after 30 games? What are you like after 3 seasons? And you've had to be in a dogfight. You've been on the mud. You've been, at the back end of an absolute hiding, You've experienced so many different factors. What you're not just in a gym coming out, playing a handful of games in a season. And I think there is absolute value in that. And some guys don't have the same trajectory. We know some guys will move on very quickly. Other guys just need a little bit of time and they need growth. And the way they get that is playing, training, dealing with injuries, dealing with disappointment, fighting against someone else who's got your shirt. And I think the league has absolute value in creating good, robust rugby players, mentally and physically, because of the nature of the competition.
And also the outcome and the product is fantastic. If look at me and you, Paves, and we spent all of our lives playing Championship rugby, and there's nothing wrong in that, is there? That's what an achievement that is, and it's fantastic. And I think now, if I've watched a couple of games on the streaming, and the product and the type of rugby that's being played is of a very high standard and very watchable.
So absolutely, and I think that's because there's an extremely good structure in terms of the league. I think there's good coaching, and there are a lot of very good players and some exceptional players in and amongst that, and a range of older guys and younger guys and a couple of foreigners, and I think the actual product and the surfaces are getting better as well.
Even your place,
even our place, which adds it. So as there's more, the only thing that is difficult. So if it was funded, and I don't want to go on about us as a league. But if it was funded properly, it would mean that there would be better retention of players, better development, more coaches, more specialism. The brand of rugby would increase. People could have better surfaces because they'd be able to obviously budget for those things. The facilities would be better. So you would have an extremely good product. I mean, it's good at the moment, but it would be even better. Something to be, you would pay your money to watch. So I just think it just requires a level of investment to push it to the next level. But I think there's a good product because there's a lot of good people involved.
And I said this to Mike the other day about the potential in the future of the championship. And you're almost in this season, you've got a period of games over the summer. Now, this is a curveball, and it's just me off on one. But if the product works, obviously there's no supporters this year, but if the streaming is good and people are interested in the league, the potential could be scope to move the championship to a summer league. And then you've got the pitch. The pitches are better all year round. And it's just an idea. And then you're not competing with like down at Pirates, where your Truro supporters that maybe go up to Chiefs, but if there's a game at the weekend, that may come down to Pirates and watch it instead. So there's potentially, there's a little bit of outside thinking that could be done around the league.
Be interested. Sorry.
No, you continue. Sorry.
I was going to say, just to sort of expand on that, the funding issue is obviously something that has been well documented, and we don't need to beat around the bush. It is obviously a massive challenge. Even before COVID, the reduced funding for the RFU this year has presented huge challenges. And, you've talked about Dickie Evans. We've got Steve Lloyd and Tony 𝙤𝙚𝙚𝙬𝙤 here at Doncaster and other benefactors. Without them, many clubs would be in a really, really tight situation. So there's a question I want to toss out. Is it just better funding that the championship needs to flourish? Or is there more we can do? I know Ben's suggestion there about summer rugby. What do you think the league needs? Is it a TV deal? Is it better coverage? Or does it all just stem from that financial input?
I think everything. I think it requires a rethink. It needs to be, it needs to be rethought, rebranded. And I think ultimately you need the finance, but that finance is only going to come if people feel there's value in the product.
Yeah.
So I think if we continue down this path, the product's going to get more devalued and the funding is going to get less and less. Whereas if we can get creative, what Ben's saying now, if we can get creative and we can get out and we can find new investment, I think there's an exciting opportunity for the league. So I think all of the above really. I don't think there's one solution, but the one thing is clear, that we've got to think outside the box now.
Sure. Let's talk about this season then. And I guess there's been a set of circumstances thrust upon us because of the lack of fans. But I want to talk about the format. I want to talk about streaming, and I want to talk about how it's going so far. For those that don't know, of course, we are in a truncated season, which means, we're going into this weekend 3 games down. You're a third of the way through almost the regular season. What have you made of the 2021 campaign so far, Alan? Or has it just been a case of we're just so glad to get back playing rugby after the last year that we've had?
So for us personally, we said, look, we need to bring some meaning to this year. Because I talked about the difficulty of getting to the start point. We said as a group, look, we've got to bring meaning to this now. We can't just go, thank God the league started. What's helped us though is because our squad size has shrunken down to a point where we're like, we are, as a lot are, shaky in certain areas. The shortened league suits us because it means we can put our player resource, our 22, 23 players, we can get them on the pitch every week. And then once we've played Donny this weekend, we've got a week off. It gives us time then, okay, now we're playing Ealing. So we build back again. We're building up psychologically, physically for that challenge. this is the thing about when the league is not funded properly. Can you do that at game 22?
Yeah. Because
what happens when you've lost your 2 centres and like we've lost our 10s? How are you going to cope? What are you going to do? And so there's a wider question there about obviously looking after the well-being of the players and obviously the club's been able to sustain a campaign. I think this is great. It's a shortened campaign. Everyone's in it. We're in it. Mm. Look at, Sarri's man's in our league. And we're all in it. We're playing, right, this week against you guys, against Donny, right? We're both in it. What meaning is that? We're going to come out, it's going to be on fire. You're going to get guys rutting against each other. Big prize at the end of it. There's a playoff opportunity. Obviously Ealing are extremely strong. And obviously Sarries are extremely strong and they're only going to get stronger. But we're in it.
Yeah.
So I just love the format, maybe by luck than judgment, but I just think let's fire into it and let's bring some excitement to it and and just our one, we managed to bloody Sarri's nose. Well, at least that gave some focus to the league to say, look, we got value. Imagine when we get to those later stages. I bet our game on the weekend is going to be brilliant.
Yeah.
I know, so I'm delighted with that answer, Alan, because I know from a personal perspective, obviously a vested interest, commercial media up here at Doncaster Knights, but I think the jeopardy of everything is so interesting with the season that we've got, and obviously, okay, there's no relegation this year, but I think that each team know that each win, it's twice as important as it is in a normal season because there's half as many games, and like you say, we've been completely blowing the horn up here in Donny. We're 3 games unbeaten. Like that, if in a normal season, that's like being 9 games unbeaten, isn't it? And obviously we're going head to head with your mob on Saturday, and all of a sudden the winner of that, are they getting talked about in the same breath as Ealing and Saracens? That's just ridiculous in itself, but it is fantastic. So I hope that enthusiasm carried across with other teams. I think it is. Obviously, we've been to Ampton, we've had Coventry come to us, been to Hartbury, and I think the streaming as well. The fact that every game is now televised for those that want to watch it. There is that availability of Championship Rugby there for those that want it. So I think it's a circumstance that's been thrust upon us, and we haven't had a choice about it. But I have to admit, I'm a fan of the 2021 structure.
Agree. And I just want to also add, like we played Richmond a couple of weeks ago. And you know what? That was a tough old game away. I mean, it really was. But I just wanted to commend every team in the Championship, to putting a side out, getting it all together, like bringing it all in, trying to get a squad. Sarries has arrived in a league that is under a lot of stress, and it just goes to show 23 lads on a pitch ain't going to make it easy for you. It don't matter if they've had 1 week prep or they've had, 4 months prep. It don't matter because it's exciting. There's something to play for. You've got good quality lads on the field. So I just think as we get out of this month into next, I think the excitement's going to build. I really do. And I think you're going to see some terrific numbers on the streaming.
I do hope so. I think, as you say, particularly once it gets towards that sort of later stages, particularly if sides like Pirates, like Donny, if they can keep up this strong form, exactly. All of a sudden, every time Saracens set foot on the pitch, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, at Doncaster, we had the pre-season tournament with Ealing and Saracens, and I don't know about you guys, but I kind of thought before that first Ealing Saracens game, I was like, look, I wouldn't look too far past Ealing here. They've recruited incredibly. How strong they've been in this division for the last couple of seasons, but I saw the reaction on social media, on YouTube, to that 27-26 win that Ealing got, and I was like, I can't remember a time that a result between 2 championship teams was generating this sort of focus, which is fantastic in itself.
Yeah, definitely.
It's amazing, yeah.
So we'll go through a bit more of these teams. Obviously, we are now going into round 4, and one thing I think you alluded to it a little bit earlier, Alan, is a bit of a doff the cap of how teams have managed to adjust and change to the circumstance. Ben, you talked about Bedford, another one of your ex-sides who have developed this link with Saints, and that's sort of their business model going forward. They're going to utilise that link quite strongly. I know that Nottingham up near us are now working very closely with local sort of employers to get their players into a sort of dual role whereby they're still playing at championship level rugby, but they're also looking at getting their sort of their first feet into employment there as well. Has there been what do you make of the way that clubs have adapted to the circumstances that they've been handed for the new season?
Because I sort of, like you say, I have good connections around the clubs through playing for them all. But sort of the ones that I know fairly well. So I know the Coventry story fairly well, because my old man works there still. He's team manager there. And I only know this because on a Friday, he is so stressed with registrations. And it's sort of their models changed. They lost 17 players through at the start of COVID, and it was a really difficult situation for them to manage, and letting those guys go is not what anybody wanted, because they were on their own pathway, beating Donny away last season, this time last year, and looking like they're going to be one of the big hitters. Now they've had to rip the whole squad apart, and their model now is very much around a core group of players, their own academy, which they've got good links in and around the Midlands. I think geographically it helps being where they are, because there's a bit more. You can travel to Coventry a little bit easier than, say, Pirates. But their model has changed, and they've got a lot of DR boys. But then it seems to be working, and a younger group of players that now will probably see them through the next 3 seasons. And they're getting this exposure this year, which will help their development, but also help Coventry on their journey. So that's just one story. Coventry's come a whole new squad, but a lot of dual reg and loan players. I know Ampton are quite similar with their guys, but it's a tricky balance, I think. And I think there's a lot more. Everyone's a lot more receptive to bringing players in from other clubs now than they maybe were when towards the end of my career. If you think of the last 3 years, you do get players like Paver will get guys from Wasps, or Sale or wherever, and there's an acceptance of it. And these guys need their rugby, but it benefits Pirates, but it also benefits the player coming down into the squad.
Has it had any effect? I know you talked about what you had to do over the summer in terms of taking the lads on that individual journey, but did you see your recruitment policy change this summer, Alan?
Yeah, I mean, we were lucky. We were able to keep the body of the squad together, and that's our strength. We have a number of local lads that have performed at a very high level for us for a long time, and we've had a lot of commitment from other guys, and so we've got a very stable core group. So even though we did shrink, we shrank to something that I felt was manageable for this competition, perfect for this competition. And then we brought in guys in and around it who were looking for experience. We got some, young talented lads from Exeter who were pushing very hard. So that was great. So that's how we filled the squad out. I don't think everyone was in such a lucky position. Some guys had to just rip up what they thought was the model and go for a different model. Some guys, I know Amptill, for example, didn't know what they were doing for a very, very long time and had to then put everything together. And I think the league has been stressed to its capacity. I don't think it could have taken much more as a collective. But again, we talk about every team being in a unique situation. I think some teams have weathered the storm extremely well, like Ealing. And then you've got a group that are like us and Donny that have done relatively well and kept the shape. I know Donny's had some change, but I think you've navigated that really well. And then I think there are some teams that have really found it tough. I know Nottingham in particular found it tough. I know Cov have found it tough. Amptill have found it tough. So I think those are the guys who've got to be commended on their ability just to change, adapt very quickly, and just get the product on the pitch and get the guys playing again.
I'd be interested to see how you guys answer this, but how good do you think this Ealing side is? Obviously, we're 3 games into the season now. They've posted 50-point scores. I know, so we saw them pre-season look very, very effective. Do you think there's a squad there that has the legs perhaps to achieve what is ultimately obviously their ambition down there in West London?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll jump in. I'll go first. I'll be brief with this. I think the fact that they've got so much infrastructure in place. Like if you go down, they've obviously got their 2 4G pitches. They're now building a new training facility. They've got links with Brunel University and driving that pretty hard, which then flows into their academy. They've got the player resource. They've got the coaching resource. And they've obviously got a backer who's fully committed and financially has the resources to keep pushing them. They've got more stability this season than they have previously. So I think they're as well positioned as any team outside of the Premiership could be.
I don't think I've got much more to add to that than Dave. So I spoke to Phil Bolton at Coventry and then Tommy Paul Turner at Ampthill recently, and they both mentioned that both their games they were both in the game at half time, and then sort of second half, Ealing has blown them away. But the scoreline from the outside doesn't tell the full story, and it's testament to the league again is that the guys, your Ampthills and your Covs will only get better. Unfortunately, you're not going to play them again, but towards, they're on their own journey and they're sticking in there for 50. So come sort of game week 7, 8, 9, Ealing, Pirates, Donny, they're going to be playing teams that have been together a bit longer, and the games are going to be even tougher for you guys.
I agree. And I think Ealing, just the foresight, I know Ben Ward really drove the ambition of the club and the league to get going and to continue. And I actually, commended him for it, because I think it was a difficult position. We all have an interest in it happening, but they managed to grow in a period of time where it got very difficult. And that's a club who are ambitious, very ambitious. And I think, their preparation was also good. Beating Sarries twice. Obviously having that, creating a competition with Doncaster as well. I think that's very smart. I think it was great. It was one of our worries. We were like, we're going to start the season with no pre-season game. If it wasn't Exeter wanted to help us out, but because at the time they couldn't cross competition, Harvey steps in. He says, "Do you want a game?" We said, "Thank you very much." We played one game. We looked pretty good. We played against Saracens, and I'm going, we got 60 minutes in us here because we only had one game. We had 40 minutes internal game. Then we played Jersey, where the lads had 40 minutes or 60 minutes. But because the game got a bit stop-start with a few bloods and bits and pieces, we rode our luck. But really, you probably won't, and I'm not saying that, you probably won't see our match fitness and probably till now or the next few. And then you push that on to the likes of Cov and Nottingham. They probably will start to get very cohesive in game 7, game 8, game 9. So I agree with what Ben's saying there. But Ealing have been very smart and very ambitious.
I think that's great. You're allowed to be ambitious in this world. And I was guilty of it when Ealing first came into the league. I was at Bedford and I was like, God, what are they doing down there? They're flashing all this cash. And you do a bit of digging, and it's Ben Ward and that group of people down there want to get to where they want to get to, and they're ambitious, and it's amazing. What's wrong with that? It's brilliant. And over the years now, they've got systems and they're Premiership ready, aren't they? You'd say, as a sort of facility and as a group, they are sort of, arguably they'd have a better setup than some of the guys within the Premiership. But I think it's great that they're ambitious, and I think it should be commended that they are, and they're bold and they're brash about saying where they want to get to. It's great.
I'm sure many fans, certainly down in your neck of the woods, Alan, will say that you've ticked off sort of the biggest dream that any sort of Pirates fan could hope beating Saracens in week one. But for the rest of the season now, what would define success for you? What are you hoping, apart from battering us on Saturday, I guess?
I know the realities of this league. I know it too well. I mean, I've had my nose bloodied too many times to ever think we'd go anywhere and have a right for anything. Like, we got to fight for everything we get. My dream is to make that final. Our dream as a club is to bring meaning and get to that final and give it everything we got to the last man. And I think we have to be bold and ambitious. And why not? 10 games. Let's go for it. Like Donny will. Let's go for it. Let's be bold. Let's think about it. Even inside, there's a little bit of you that goes, are we good enough? Have we got the squad size? Nah, let's get rid of that. Let's get the lads on the field and let's have a look at it. Week to week, let's have a look at it and let's get to that play. Let's have a go. And then you just never know. You never know. And I think that's where we are as a club, is we're just saying, let's get there. Even if it's a dream, let's just have a go at it.
It's the first time since I've stopped playing that I want to play again. Yeah. Get me down there. I want to come down to training tomorrow, mate. You got me all fired up here.
Listening to that almost enough to convert me to a Pirates fan, Alan. And I think, to be honest...
But then you've got this 8-hour bus trip and like that. I don't fancy that.
Yeah. Gents, I think that's as good a spot as any for us to call it a day. I think we've covered some fantastic things there. Alan, thank you very much for your time today. Good luck with every game in the season except this Saturday. And, Ben, thank you as well. I'm looking forward to us sort of progressing this a little bit further. And for you listening, I'd urge everyone at championshiprugby.co.uk/live-streams. Get into the games. There's a full complement of fixtures this weekend. Obviously, Six Nations is now out of the way, so pick your game, support your local championship club or support another championship club. We'll hopefully be back in a week's time. Find us on Twitter. It is Champ Clubs Pod. I'll say that again, at Champ Clubs Pod. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon.